1. I can't remember how old I was, but it was between 7 and 9. We had gone on a school trip to this camping resort. We'd sleep in tents, then we could go to the big playground. That was public and open to any guest on the site, as well as a pool with the same rules and some stores. Me and some other classmates would hang out at the playground because they had swings, climbing towers, a bouncy castle. Just less castle, more a bouncy platform. Still fun, though. There were other kids, but we didn't pay them much mind. If they came over and asked to play, we always said sure. Now one kid shows up who is our entitled kid. She has a genetic condition, that is the correct term I checked, called Down syndrome. This is important for what happens next. EK would continually harass me, my classmates, and those who were playing with us. We were at the climbing tower and she came up demanding we leave because it was hers. At first we said it was a public playground, but she began throwing some of our outdoor toys at us. We decided fine, we'll go somewhere else and play, until she'd get bored and leave. We went to the bouncing platform and she once again came up, same thing. This went on for a while. Apparently what she meant to say was we had to leave the playground, not just what she wanted to play on. Even when we split up to do different things, she'd just come after us one at a time. She went away for a little bit and we thought she got bored and went back to wherever she was camping. Eventually, we were called to dinner, we were making burgers, and after that we were allowed to do whatever until bedtime, but could only visit the pool if escorted by an adult. It was safe not to supervise us all the time because the place had security. I and some others went back to the playground and we ran around doing the usual. Now guess who showed up? EK. And I've delayed enough, so here she is, the entitled mother. Seemed to be in her mid-20s, blonde, curly hair, dressed kinda skimpy if I remember correctly, and extremely heavy makeup. She had a boyfriend who I'd mistake for a junkie or alcoholic in present day. Right before the final confrontation, EK ran over to us again and demanded we leave. One had told the teacher who lectured him not to give in to a bully's demands, and if she kept it up, to go get security. He told her it was a public playground, and when that didn't register, he shouted at her to go away. The mom's ignoring us and drinking with her boyfriend. I'm assuming she believed her baby could handle us just fine. EK got mad and began screaming at us to go leave her playground. We said no again, so she ran up and shoved me. I got mad and shoved her back, and that's when EM finally decided we had to be dealt with.
How dare you bully my daughter?
We're not bullying her.
She just asked nicely to play with you and you keep ignoring her.
She keeps telling us to leave the playground. She's the one bullying us.
How dare you? My little sweetie is disabled. Why can't you show some respect and just leave?
Yes, she went from she's just asking you to play with her to she's telling you to leave, so why don't you? This is a public park. We're allowed to be here. Our teacher told him to say that if we got harassed again, I think.
Well, I don't feel comfortable with you kids here with my daughter, especially after she,
me,
attacked her for no reason.
Not proud of it, but I was just kind of hiding behind all of them. I didn't know it at the time, but I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, mild form of autism, at age 4. And I get frightened when people yell at me. She shoved her first. At this point, entitled mother has had enough and she and her boyfriend decide to remove us by force. Yeah, that fucking happened. She managed to grab 2 kids, including the one driving the conversation, before someone walked up and asked what the hell was going on. She claimed she was just disciplining her kids, I assume as to not look like a potential kidnapper. Didn't entirely work though, because the person walking up was our teacher, and he was pissed. He began to berate her and her boyfriend, who were still trying to grab me, calling them perverts, kidnappers, child predators, and threatened to call the cops. Then finally, someone from security showed up about time, hadn't seen them all day, and asked what was going on. We tried explaining she tried to remove us because she thought her daughter owned the playground. The teacher was still going on about how she and her boyfriend were pedophiles. Little irrational, especially when we just said what happened. And EM? Well,
I just wanted them to leave the playground so my daughter could play safely and not risk being bullied.
She motions to EK, who never stopped wailing after I shoved her. Is this true? Were you bullying her? We all shook our heads, no.
That's what they all say. These kids might bully my little girl if left alone with her. They don't know what it's like to be disabled and will pick on her because she's different. They always do.
I should probably have felt bad because she made it sound like that's what happens a lot. And I got bullied a lot too at the time. But that kid had done nothing but harass us the entire time. So, at the time, I didn't really have much sympathy. As far as I was concerned, she was a bully, and so it came off as her trying to get pity points. Security guy lectured her about not watching her kid, and the teacher explained she and her boyfriend grabbed us without consent, and when confronted, pretended they were our parents. Teacher told us to go back to our tents. As we left, she was still going on about how she felt we shouldn't be around because we might stare at her poor disabled little girl and bully her. She seemed very fast to side with us over her. Maybe the kid pulled this on other children too. Don't know. I never found out what happened to her. We never saw her again. Maybe she was arrested. I'd like to think so. Or maybe she was banned from the campsite, or at least the playground. When I remembered, I tried calling my mom, who did not believe me. I've been in some crazy situations where if you were not there, you won't believe it. Now that I think about it, I'm not sure if that guy was her boyfriend. He could be her brother, cousin, friend, anything really. But for the sake of the story, let's say boyfriend. I'm convinced she's the kid's mom because she called her mommy once. And all the things her mom called her. 2. Alright, let me start out by saying this happened a long time ago, after I had stopped working at Mickey D's. It was my first job and I didn't even last 2 months because upper management there was batshit crazy, in the sense that she yelled at me for putting ketchup on a burger after the mustard. But that's the story for a different day. On to the EM fiasco. As mentioned above, the McDonald's I worked at was the smallest in the area, and was notorious for getting complaints from people quite often in hopes of getting free stuff. Right across the way was a grocery store that I worked at after leaving MD's, and I stopped in to grab lunch and see how my old co-workers were doing. The place was a madhouse. They were doing the best they could with the few bodies they had, but inside was packed and there was a long line in the drive-thru. I felt bad for most of them immediately. I ordered my food and could hear a few of the other customers as they made comments passing by the window. One of them belonged to our superstar EM. She made some offhand comment about hoping the food was still warm with how long she had to wait, and some joke about fast food, more like slow food. Nobody laughed because that joke is never funny. So anyway, I'm waiting in the sidelines for my order, and about 3 or 4 minutes later, this lady marches past me in a huff and waves her bag at the girl behind the register's face. You know, because she is the most important paying customer.
Excuse me, but I just waited in line forever and you forgot half of my fries.
I'm terribly sorry, miss. We'd be happy to replace them.
Well, you wouldn't have to replace them if you didn't chip me in the first place. How hard is it to fill the containers up all the way?
I'm really sorry. We'll get you new fries soon.
It better be soon. I had to wait for almost a half hour in drive-thru.
The poor girl was so flustered, understandably, because she was new and she just repeatedly apologized, trying to appease the hangry EM. The nerve. How could the cashier have been so neglectful of her as she tried to get these fine folks their food? Well, EM wasn't content with her apologies and had to make sure everyone in the restaurant heard about it. She bitched, she moaned. She went on to gripe to the lady beside her who was just as hungry as the rest of us, but had enough common sense to be quiet about it. After about a solid minute of her loud mouth, my own anger got the best of me and I unleashed the beast within. Lady, can you not see how busy they are?
Excuse me? I don't believe I was talking to you.
Oh, you weren't? Because as loud as you're being, the entire restaurant can hear your griping. EM didn't like that one bit. She huffed, she puffed. But she just crossed her arms and kept scoffing repeatedly because not a soul stood up for her, and her little pea brain couldn't comprehend how to handle sarcasm, or shoot out a witty retort. Poor hangry EM being humiliated like that. The best part about the whole thing was the girl behind the counter whispering and mouthing thank you to me. I grabbed my food when it came up, threw EM a disgusted look and told her, "Don't let miserable people ruin your day, they're not worth it." Her smile could have lit up the room, and EM just glowered daggers at me. I've dealt with people like that when I worked there and have zero tolerance for the disrespect. As such, I will always defend employees if I see that crap, and shut it down with the quickness. 3. So, small backstory before I make formal introductions. I'm a body piercer at a studio in the UK, name of Old Pokies. I have done the job for 6 years and had a rather intensive training for 2 years. This is relevant to the story, please remember this part. I have recently moved to this studio from my previous as it was closer to home for me. In with the cast, sire. Manager, literally G. He's the best manager and support a gal could ask for. Colleague, amazing gal, I see. Innocent daughter who was getting her piercing, 13 years old. WM, wonderful mum, not the entitled parent. She was a godsend. ED, the aforementioned entitled parent who isn't worthy of an awesome nickname. Me. It's me, ya boy. Female piercer. Relevant again. IC2, innocent older sister of the little girl, around my age. IC2F, the sister's friends, absolute delight, not a big role, but was present. Set stage 2 p.m. this very afternoon. UK, Greenwich Mean Time. So I have an incredibly busy day today. We go via a walk-in appointment service for our customers, which isn't an issue for anyone because they can choose a time which suits them. At this point, all but 3 slots were taken by pre-bookings throughout the day. In comes the most wonderful lady. IC, IC2, IC2F, and ED. Now I clocked IC straight away, and could tell she was nervous, so approached her, since I had a free 10 minutes. Note, the piercers are not supposed to be on the shop floor if we're not rotated in for it, but I could see she was pale and nervous, so I bent the rule a little. I spent the 10 minutes explaining everything to her and her WM, who was more than happy that I took the time to explain to her and her daughter everything she needed to know, including letting IC choose her earrings. They happily booked in for the next appointment, which was 20 minutes after, and went for a hot chocolate. So if you haven't been scared away by boredom, here's the juicy part. The family arrived promptly for the appointment, and as per studio rules, I explained IC could have one other person with her. But since she was still nervous, I said she could have 2. Big mistake. She asked if IC2 could come in. Second big mistake. We got into the room, and I proceeded to wash my hands, glove, sanitize my workspace, which I do in front of customers as well as after, and prepare jewelry for the piercing. I clean her lobes, and her WM mentions that because of their community, Jehovah or Mormon, I didn't ask or want to pry out of respect. It's a massive thing to have piercings, and it needed to be perfect, and her father needed to agree since his say goes. Which I smiled and made sure it was to the tiniest millimeter exact. In other words, it was 0.0000000000001 precise. No other way of saying it was perfect.
Oh my gosh, it's perfect! I see. Take a look in the mirror.
What do you think, lovely?
I like it. It's perfect, thank you.
Shall we call your father in and see what he thinks? At this point, the WM smile had turned into a slight frown as she called him in. QED and his delightful personality. He puts his glasses on and looks individually. First mistake, you'll find out why shortly. They are not even? Sir, if you stand here and look straight ahead at IC, you'll see that they are perfect. But they aren't straight. One is higher than the other. How many years have you done this because you clearly don't know what you're doing? I look over at WM, who looked like she was going to cry. I did my best calm-down hand gesture. I smile my best people smile. Sir, I've been doing this since I was 17. I'm 23 now. With 2 years intensive training behind that as well. Piercing solo 4 years, training 2 years, so 6 in total. Look at it straight on, and remember that no one has symmetrical ears. Look at mine, for example. One sticks out at the top, and the other doesn't. One is always bigger than the other, so to get them perfect from this angle, one needs to be higher than the other. And when the earrings are in the piercing, you will see what I mean. You don't know how to do your job. I want to speak to your manager. In my day, we never did all this training. We did it right first time. But you clearly know what you're doing, even though this isn't a feminine job, so just shut up and do it. I smile. What I'm going to do is book another slot because it's now 3 p.m. and I have another appointment. I'll be back shortly to take extra time with IC. I book off another appointment and my colleague pulls the "Are you okay" face. I smile and walk back to my studio. I return to the room and politely ask ED to leave so I can do my job, since I already asked IC2, WM, and IC2F to stay. I finished the piercing, and IC, WM, and IC2 are so ecstatic that WM asks for a photo to show their church. Absolutely. So after a few group photos, courtesy of IC2F, we exit the room to the scornful eye of ED, who just glared at me like a smug child. "I've spoken to your manager. You're in trouble." Manager silently stares at me for help. "Sir, what do you think now the jewelry is in?" "I suppose it'll do." "You're the piercing expert, not me. Your manager is going to deal with you." "I'm going to be bluntly honest, sir. I don't respect your attitude. I've been doing this for 6 years and I've never misplaced a piercing in my career. I went a whole year before I was able to touch a needle, let alone pierce someone, and to be quite frank, I'd like to see you do better. Unless you're a body piercer with more experience than me, I don't approve of your opinion." "But let me finish, please, sir. I don't approve of your opinion in my workplace, and I've worked tirelessly every day for 6 years to build my reputation up. And when my day starts at 5 a.m., I really don't think you have a say in my job. I'm saying it's too masculine a job. I pierce better than some of my best friends who are male piercers. I would appreciate you leaving my studio now. Your family are more than welcome to return, but you are not. Have a lovely day, sir. I'm going for a cigarette." "Manager, aren't you going to reprimand this delinquent?" "Sir, she asked you to leave. I was on the shop floor and heard everything since you kept the door open. I trust my staff's judgment over yours." Cue shocked Pikachu face. WM brought me a coffee to say thank you. 4. So for the past 2 years I've worked as one of Santa's elves and took photos for families with Santa. Now yes, I have enjoyed the job, but there are always those parents in particular who make my job unbearable. Me and my co-workers had 3-hour shifts, one from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. and the second from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. I, being a veteran since I worked the previous year, was given multiple shifts. So basically each day I got there at 12:45 and left maybe around 7:15 p.m., depending on how busy the day was. There were 3 jobs that we would be assigned to each day: cashier, photographer, and photo printer. I hated being the photographer because I could never get kids to pay attention. We had toys with bells we would ring to attempt to get the kids' attention while the EPs just stood by on their phones, not helping whatsoever. Those EPs were the ones who would complain their kid was crying in the photo or not smiling. Some EPs would ask us to retake photos even though the line was long, and we didn't have time to retake, but unfortunately we would sometimes have to retake, because they just wouldn't leave the photo printer alone. We would retake the photos, and would again get the same result of kids crying or not smiling, even though we asked the parents to help get the kids' attention. The worst shifts I've worked were the evening shifts that felt like they lasted an eternity. The lines were ridiculously long, basically out the door. Many smart parents would show up early and wait in line before we opened so they could get their pictures taken and printed quickly. However, then there were the EPs who decided to show up after we had already closed off the line. Since we close up at 7, we would estimate how long each family that was left in line would take, and then close off the line if there were at least 6 or 7 families waiting in line, about 6:50 p.m. I was usually the one to close off the line, tell the last family in line they were the last ones, and I would tell the security guard to not let any more families in, but of course, they would let people in, which pissed me and my co-workers off. Sometimes it would be about 6:50 p.m. with only 4 or 5 families in line, so we could keep the line open until 6:55, then close it off. Most families are totally fine with coming back the next day or later on if we're closing up from the 1 to 3 p.m. shift. Now here's where the fun comes in. It was Christmas Eve, and it was the busiest I've ever seen the line. Literally out the door and down the sidewalk. Family after family came through, and we tried to print off their pictures as quickly as we could, But we had to print off other orders first. We told families the photos would be done in maybe 15 minutes, but sometimes it became an hour depending on how many orders we had and if parents were complaining. As 7 p.m. came close, we decided to keep the line open as long as possible, all the way up to 6:59 p.m. We thought we were being very generous for keeping the line open for as long as we did, and many families showed up just before we closed, which was fine. But then came 2 EPs and their EKs. It was past 7 p.m. We had already closed off the line and had no more customers for the night. EPs wanted to get photos taken with Santa, but I told them, "We're sorry, but we're closed. We closed at 7 and it's past 7. We can't take your photos." "But it's only a few kids, you can take the pictures." "I'm sorry, ma'am, but no, we can't take your kids' pictures. Again, we're closed," I said. At this point I was furious and the security guard was doing nothing to help. She just stood there watching this all happen. EP kept telling us to take her kids' pictures because it's Christmas. "Yes, it is, but we're closed," I yelled because she kept berating me. It was causing a scene, but I didn't care. "You're ruining Christmas for my kids. How dare you?" they said. Did I ruin Christmas? If anything, the parents ruined Christmas because they showed up after we closed. Eventually, my boss came out and asked what was going on, which me and my coworkers explained. My boss told the lady exactly what I told her. And, finally, the security guard escorted them away. The kids were crying and their parents just glared at me. Not the best experience, but I couldn't believe how inconsiderate people could be, expecting us to take their kids' photos after Santa already left. 5. This isn't about any specific interaction with an EP, but about a general experience with many. My dad had me and my 2 younger brothers volunteer at the Salvation Army for Christmas when I was in 6th grade. It was in one of the biggest, most crime-filled, poorest cities in my state. He got us there because he was friends with the person running it. I thought it was extremely fun and exciting. My dad's friend, the woman who ran it, let's say Mrs. C, had a giant 5-inch binder. Each page had the profile of a kid and gave their age and interests. She would turn a page, me and my brothers would see the profile, and then we would all go into one of the rooms filled wall to wall with thousands of toys, then fill up a large brown paper bag with them. I'm not sure what kids ask for nowadays, but this was in like 2007, and a lot of kids genuinely wanted specific board games and dolls and baby things, like the dolls that are like newborn babies that you have to take care of, cute girly things, and boys always wanted action figures and just games or toys with specific themes. So we generally got to give kids pretty much exactly what they wanted. There was a secret closet that had a couple bikes and some iPods and iTunes gift cards, Nintendo DS related things, etc. The bikes were meant for specific kids that had prior agreements with Mrs. C, and the technology things were for older kids. Mrs. C, who had run the business for many years, said she only gave those things to children she was very familiar with, and who had been coming here for years. She told me, "When I first started here, I gave an iPod to a mother for her 14-year-old daughter. After I gave it to her, I watched her walk across the street and sell it to someone random for cash to buy drugs. I never made that mistake again." Then came the day that all of the parents would arrive and pick up their bags. My dad let us skip school so we could be there helping. The parents all lined up at the entrance in front of Mrs. C and my dad. They gave their name, Mrs. C flipped to their page in the binder, yelled out a number, and me and my brothers ran and got the bag with the corresponding number on it. Kids who were receiving bikes and iPods and DS had to go through a side entrance, so that no other parents would see that they are getting these things. In previous years, parents would get into actual physical fights with other parents when they believed they are getting better items than their kid. Immediately, my crazed excitement and joy over the situation was killed. Parents wordlessly snatched the kids' bags out of my hands, never thanked me. I was a cute little girl saying Merry Christmas to everyone I handed the bag to, and only a few, out of over 100 parents, said anything back. People came in trying to get toys for their kids even though they had never signed up. There's an October deadline to sign up for this program, and the application process is serious and multi-tiered. And I'm pretty sure it involved background checks.
"There shouldn't be deadlines. My kids deserve a Christmas. How can you be so selfish? Just pull one toy out of that bag over there. It looks really full."
Parents tried to intimidate me into pulling toys from other bags, basically with,
I'm an adult and you're a child, so do as I say.
and said things like,
Do you think that person deserved a better Christmas than my daughter, just because they signed up?
I heard one mom on her phone speaking in Spanish after she received a bag. I knew basic Spanish, and when I overheard her calling my dad and Mrs. C selfish and greedy, I felt sick to my stomach and like I wanted to cry. A lot of parents opened their bags in front of everyone right as they received them, holding up the line almost like people in a fast food drive-thru who open their bags while still at the window and open their sandwiches to make sure they're okay. Those parents tried to argue about what they received.
My kid doesn't want this doll. They want a video game. They don't want X, they want Y.
When I knew that just about every kid received either exactly what they asked for or something in the realm of what they asked for. I remember keeping a happy expression on the entire time, and then crying as soon as we left. My Christmas spirit was destroyed that year. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to the Impractical Proudness of Parents. IPUP number 26. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Well, by the time you guys hear this video, it will be the 1st of December. I believe, yes it will. So rather appropriate that we have a couple of Christmas stories in the video already. Well, actually, speaking of already, I've noticed the past few days we're still in November, but as always every year there's those very excitable people who already have their Christmas decorations up. Bless them. Speaking personally, I haven't put a Christmas decoration up in years. I've got a tree somewhere, box full of decorations. I probably wouldn't bother with it though. A lot of hassle. Not really anywhere to put it now that I think about it in the living room. I've got my tower for my Vive, where the Christmas tree would usually go. And I'll probably get more joy out of that, to be honest with you. Well, okay. With that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening. And take very good care of yourselves.